Hello, you're listening to Recalibrate and Go, a podcast brought to you by Aptude. I'm your host, Michael Foster. Hey, this is Recalibrate and Go, brought to you by Aptude. I'm your host, Michael Foster, and this is probably going to be our last episode for a while. Now, I know if you've been listening, you're going to say, well, you guys have been gone for a few months, and what, you come back and you do just one more episode? Yeah, and the reason being is simply put is that we've been very busy over here at Aptude. It's been a very, very good year for us, which is very humbling because it's been a very hard year for so many, but that being said, we're just very humbled. We're honored. We're just so happy that we've actually had a pretty good year and we've kept this busy and we've been able to help a lot of people out. And so that's where we're at. And so it looks like we will be coming back to you maybe sometime later in 2021. We're going to be working on a bunch of different other projects and stuff, some videos, some animations. It's going to be great. And we can't wait to share them with you. But in the meantime, for our last episode of 2020, and before we go on a real hiatus for a bit, I've got two people that I couldn't be happier to have them, especially for this episode. Nick and Asif from Reuters Events. It is Reuters Events, right? Or is there another name I should be calling you guys?
You're all right, Reuters Events.
Okay, I want to make sure. Reuters Events. And we met back in November of 2019. So it was a year ago. Well, no, it's December now. So it was over a year ago at the FreightWaves event.
Yeah, we did.
BC, as we call it, before Corona.
Exactly. and so, which now seems like, I know it was last decade, but it literally seems like a decade ago. And we've been keeping in touch ever since. And Aptude will be excited to be doing some stuff with Reuters Events in the coming year or so. We're working on that, and we're very excited about that. And we really hit it off. These guys are great. And I thought, well, we got to get them on the podcast. And so here you guys are. And we're going to make it as fun and informative as we possibly can. So thank you guys, first of all, for coming on board. How are things in London?
Cold, but good. Our lockdown, as everyone's been experiencing, has actually come out today. So we can actually walk out in the streets and stores and restaurants are open. So yeah, I mean, it's as well as it can be in the climate that we're all in and we're all experiencing, right?
Right. It is funny too, because when we started this podcast, a lot of the subjects were just basically talking about what's it like now that COVID is hit and we're all working from home. Well, now we've all been home for quite a while. And so the antsiness has kicked in. And one of the things we'll definitely be talking about is sort of some philosophies about how do you get through these challenging times, just from a business perspective. But we'll get into that in a moment. But I did want to talk to you guys real quick. If you don't mind, just give me an introduction and expand. Tell me about you guys. What do you guys do over there at Reuters Events? Whoever wants to go first.
Nick can go first.
So Asif and I work together within the supply chain department of Reuters Events. So we put together the business information that we put out, whether that's webinars, white papers, physical events as they were, and virtual events as they are now. So we work with folks like yourself across the pond, putting together some really exciting content in a very dynamic and fast changing industry that is the logistics and supply chain industry.
That's better than I could have explained it, actually.
Definitely. Asif, do you want to bolt anything onto what?
No, well, the thing is, though, Nick, you did such a great job on outlining and being much more succinct. I would have said the same thing, but it would have taken me 5 minutes. So now I'll stick with your nice, clean definition. In short, we talk to everyone. So anyone who has a supply chain responsibility, Nick and I more than likely will have a relationship with. So yeah, it's all about keeping let's say, your fingers on the pulse, so to speak, when it comes to the ever-changing dynamic nature of supply chain, which there has been a lot in these last few months.
Yeah, and that's right off the bat. We want to talk about this in terms of just the last 6 months, just from a tech perspective. What's changed? What's evolved in the logistics industry? What have you guys seen? And I'll let you guys kind of run with this.
I think the overall trend, in my view, is digitization and technology was already occurring within supply chain, BC before Corona. And I think like a lot of things, Corona's accelerated that process. You've seen a lot more technology, innovation, and adoption because they have to. Supply chains have been so stretched that you've needed supply chain visibility is no longer a luxury, it's a must. So whether it's your favorite meal, whether it's a staple like toilet paper that was, sold out everywhere because of, misinformation, it's exposed the term supply chain and technology. Even like I was just watching the news earlier today when they were talking about the vaccine, and they were talking about the supply chain elements associated with the vaccine because of storage. That's now a mainstream conversation. As a result, the technology associated with it has now become a mainstream conversation too. And that's the biggest change I've seen.
No, that tracks, actually. I know that's why we've been so busy at Aptude. Is simply put, because COVID definitely showed a lot of the vulnerabilities that were already there. They were within the supply chain. They were in the technology, but they become aggravated because of all the stress of now everybody just buying things online and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's been pretty stressful, pretty tough. I mean, the delivery driver to Nick's house is fed up that he has to go there 4 times a day, for argument's sake. When he used to do it once a month. But Nick's constantly an Amazon junkie, so he's the acceleration again within e-commerce has been a huge adopter that we've seen. Again, a trend that was already happening, but massively accelerated.
Definitely. And I think just jumping in there, I'd like to get your opinion on this, Michael, as well, is around, I guess, just the ease of use of everything. So taking some of the players that maybe Asif mentioned and some of the players that dominate when it comes to e-commerce, the ease of use from a kind of a user experience perspective is so good and so polished. And that feeds all the way down from, viewing the product to getting it delivered. And the customer expects that journey to be seamless. And maybe in the past, the delivery logistics angle of it was kind of bolted on. And now it's very intrinsic to the whole experience of purchasing a product online, if that makes sense.
What I found was really interesting is that, because I've been ordering from Amazon since 1997. It was Christmas of 97 was the first year I literally did all my shopping online through Amazon. And I was an early sort of adopter of that technology. I was in college at the time. So you know how it is. The college kids were sort of it's always kind of the case, right? They sort of seem to be on the pulse of what's coming up. At least that's how it was in my day. I don't know if it's that way now. Maybe it's a different demographic. But I remember, just the magic of ordering something online and then it's showing up. And then, of course, obviously over the years, they really got it down to a science and I remember this last year, if you ordered something on Amazon and they really tried to tighten that window, they kind of understood that if they could help it, if they could try to get that product to you within 2 or 3 days, then you weren't going to have a lot of buyer's remorse and you would still get that gratification. It was interesting, though, because I found that when COVID hit, you could get really addicted to watching your package. Oh, it's only 3 doors down. Because, like a lot of times they have that now. You can track it. You can literally see where the driver is, right? And you get so excited with the anticipation. And I noticed that they've actually kind of pulled back just a little bit in terms of trying to guarantee that 24-hour delivery time or, that instant gratification. And I think it's just simply because everybody's just overwhelmed. So I've noticed that they did this wonderful job of managing expectations and then getting your expectations to be like, I hit a button and it shows up. And now they're kind of like, I hit a button, it will show up. But, COVID, there might be some problems. It could take an extra day or so. They've been having a lot of caveats to the delivery. And that makes sense. I mean, these are extraordinary times. But
definitely, I think just to your point, managing expectations is so critical. I ordered something on Black Friday and I was told it was going to take 2 weeks to arrive, and it arrived within 5 days. And there was actually a sense of that they'd really managed the expectations correctly. And I was kind of very happy that it arrived within 5 days as opposed to the 14 days they told me it was going to arrive. So I think the importance of managing expectations is really critical. What do you think about that, Asif?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you got Christmas shopping right now. You know, we gave the Amazon example, but we've got so used to, you know, click and turn up within, let's say, a 24-hour window. I went to buy something for my dad, which was just like an Amazon Fire Stick, on Black Friday, and it was told me it was going to be delivered a lot closer towards Christmas. And that feeling of, oh my God, 2-3 years ago, I wouldn't have bothered. I thought it was an okay thing to do. But all I was now, that need for instant gratification, that on-demand element that I'm so used to, made me buy it and then cancel my order because I don't want to wait 3-4 weeks. How dare I? You know, what's happened to me when I think about it objectively? It's a difficult one. Managing expectations, managing that supply chain for these on-demand products. I understand it's tough when I think about it objectively, but when you create the perception and you foster the image that, you know, when you click something, it literally turns up the next day. When it doesn't, you don't feel very good inside.
Definitely.
I think it depends. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say quickly, just to Asif's point, one of my great mantras in life that I try to abide by is repetition is reputation. And I think that really applies to the delivery experience that you're getting with these e-commerce players. And when you get accustomed to such high levels of service when it comes to delivery, that is why you end up going back. And when you maybe try and experiment with other players that maybe don't have those extensive networks and are maybe a little bit slower, I think you're maybe not inclined to go back with them again because their reputation through the repetition failures isn't aligned, if that makes sense.
I also think it depends on the product, and I give you a perfect example just for myself. I ordered a couple sweaters because we've been wearing the same things obviously for the last 6 months, and since we're all at home, we're kind of wearing a little bit more t-shirts and sweatshirts, that sort of a thing. And I started to realize I'm kind of wearing through some of this stuff, and I found out that my order was going to be delayed a few days. It didn't really bother me. I was like, oh well, it's just a few days, that's fine. That being said, I remember last year when I went to order a new phone, I needed to upgrade my Samsung. When I found out that it was going to be delayed 2 days, it freaked me out. Wait, no, you said it was going to be your Friday. It's going to be Monday. Are you crazy? And it wasn't a big deal. My other phone was fine. It was, of course, cracked because I have a tendency to drop my phones. But I find that certain products, especially electronics, you have to work harder to manage those expectations. Because I find that especially phones and things like that, things that we feel like we need to have, if it takes too long, it really wigs people out. Where some items and some things, you can play a little bit more with the expectations and people aren't as bothered by it.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it really matters. If it's a big ticket item like a phone or like a TV, I think that is really important. Maybe, something of lower value, maybe you can accept, a slight delay, if that makes sense.
Time for a break. These are crazy times, man. And, we recognize all of your overall strategies might be taking a back seat to the immediate priorities of the moment. But as we get through this, Aptude will be ready with options to get those projects back on track. Contain costs while providing quality deliverables so that you can get more done. We're here to help. Whether or not you need services right now or just want to have a friendly, free-flowing, brainstorming chat about your current situation, don't hesitate to reach out. We're Aptude, keeping you one step ahead of the curve.
Part of it too, I think, is just the magic is gone, right? The thrill is gone of ordering online.
Yeah, horrible, isn't it? Because everything's so accessible now. You don't think about, back in the day, when I say back in the day, in the days of CDs and vinyl, you would look forward so much to when that was going to be released. You see the flyers and posters everywhere. Now, when it's accessible in this digital culture, there's a greater sense of disposability with it. So that's a double-edged sword of the on-demand culture that we see the benefit of, but then also, the other side too.
it's funny too, because I think about, because now we're heading towards Christmas. So I kind of understand that if you order something and it may or may not get there before Christmas, where you can say, okay, then this is kind of a deal breaker for me. Yeah, I kind of get it with, like, if there's a birthday, if there's a certain event where something has to be like delivered, then yeah, I can kind of understand that. And I'll have to share a story. We'll close with the story about the Hello Kitty toaster from 20 years ago about, well, that's a little teaser for later, about like managing expectations in terms of ordering things online. But before we go on to the next topic, is there any other things about the logistics industry over the last 6 months that you see that really stick out, that has changed dramatically, or just even just some little things of note?
Definitely. I think just generally when it comes to the ease of use of technology, I think something that has plagued the industry is maybe the struggles around, legacy systems. I think we're seeing a lot of technologies now where you can essentially just bolt it on to the legacy systems you already have. And I think that is a really exciting development, and we can see that, really evolving over the next, 18 months and really helping accelerate the industry from kind of a technology digitalization perspective.
Yeah. And no, we've seen that at Aptude. I mean, that's, like I said, we've been very busy at our company, just because a lot of people had to upgrade. They were forced to upgrade, just because of world events. And now with the demand, simply, people couldn't just and people love to drag their feet all the time on legacy systems, right? Like, that's like the worst thing to do, because it's going to be a mess. Everybody, you will put off a legacy system until the last minute. But this year, people had to jump on it.
Definitely. I would be interested in your opinion on, I guess, the importance of just making it easy to use, and how the importance of, I guess, the user experience from a kind of a UI UX perspective is kind of so important to these technologies actually being used in a day-to-day business environment.
Well, I think really in the end, it's just about UI UX design, isn't it? Something, and then I think people always say, "Oh, it's got to be minimalist. It's got to be minimalist." Yeah, to a point. I think in the end, there's a certain sort of instinctual design that you acquire over years of just working with this kind of stuff, that you understand that in the end, you're going to come up with a certain design aesthetic, and it has to serve the purpose of what the app needs to do. It also has to draw attention to certain areas that you need the user to pay attention to. And it's all like a balancing act. It's like when you're designing something, I always like, in Japan, you get a bento box. You ever go to a Japanese restaurant and you get food, and everything is just presented in such a nice minimalistic way, but yet at the same time it has characteristics and it all kind of stands out. I always say that, when you do great UI UX, you got to think in those terms. I think what happens is people think minimalism and they make nothing special. It's like the old saying goes, if everything is special, then nothing is special. But if nothing is special, then nothing is special. It's kind of the same thing. Is that in the end, you have to know what the objectives for your business are. You have to know what the objectives of the user is, and mesh those together in a UI UX that will perform in a way that gets the results that you want. Of course, they're going to find ways to break that UI UX, and there's going to find clever ways to work that system. And so once you've built it and you put it out there, of course, getting the data to say, okay, well, this is how people are using it, and then to make adjustments accordingly. So I think that's the other thing. I think people make a big mistake that once they put it out there, it's like, okay, it's good, we're done. And no, you have to have a support team that's constantly monitoring how the system is being used. And then you should revisit probably at least within a few months to make any sort of critical changes, but even following up like every year or so to say, okay, we need to change the UI UX of this, because we're seeing that it's not being used the most efficiently as it is right now. I think a lot of people forget about that. They think it's done. We all have that mentality, like it's done. But like technology is like fashion. It's never really finished.
Yeah, I suppose it's that need for constant evolution, right? Because we're in a time now where if something look and feels like a common or a very well-known social networking platform, more than likely will get used. You've seen in other industries where something has been over-engineered. When it's over-engineered, no one uses it. You've seen, let's say, in automotive with, you know, these cars that have all these extras and gadgets and like this, like that. They're complicated to use. So what happens? The owner doesn't use them. They pay for them, but they don't use them. So the need for simplicity, you know, using a good template that you see on other software platforms that we've all used in our own lives, tends to be, you know, a good, if you like, a good recipe to that actually has translated quite well into some of these technical systems we've seen, let's say, in the supply chain. So
well,
yeah,
we were talking about too with the apps, right? I think we were just
Yeah.
briefly before we even started talking about this, the idea that, you know, a lot of times people in the logistics industry, they have the apps, but they're not using them. You know more about this than I do.
yeah, I think it's a literacy element. Our industry is funny, right? Because Nick and I, we talk to lots of people, we see lots of industries. This is now a cool industry to be in, because you talk to lots of cool, nice young people. They recognize it as a supply chain is a value add. You know, and as a result, their culture into this market is to create help and solutions. You look around at their offices; they're amazing. There could be any, you know, tech startup. It's that good. There's no, I suppose, previous understanding of what might be considered to be supply chain. It's now supply chain 4.0 is how I like to view our market right now. And that's because of technology and, more importantly, the mindsets that have come into this market.
Yeah,
Definitely. I think Asif and I always joked. He always said to me that this industry wasn't cool, especially coming from his automotive background. But now he's realized this is actually a cool industry. Logistics is where it's at. And the technology that's coming into the industry is really, really cool. And the impacts that we're having on day-to-day lives of folks is actually really important. You take the vaccine and how that's going to be distributed. So logistics is so important to, you know, our day-to-day lives. I think the technology innovations are really exciting. But Michael, I just wanted to quickly go back to what you mentioned earlier around you know, the development of the platforms and things like that from a user perspective. I think it's important as well to what you mentioned is to iterate on what you do and not have that fear that what you release has to be perfect and has to be the final version. I always go back to the original iPhone as a really good example. It didn't have copy and paste, and we take for granted copy and paste. But what happened was they released the iPhone, they realized we need to have copy and paste, and then they put it on in a later update. So I think that is really important, is you don't have this kind of paralysis that what we release initially has to be that final perfect version, and we can improve and iterate on things as they go on, if that makes sense.
you know, it seems obvious, right? When you say you always have to be changing, you always have to be adjusting. And sometimes when you release a early version, a beta version of something, you forget something that seems also so obvious. But that's okay. It's interesting because, like, with technology, it's always been able to get away with that in some cases. It's version 1, version 2, version 3. It's sort of baked into our expectations of technology. But it is a point at which, and I know, like, in the video game industry, they're having these problems now, especially with, like, the sports titles, where they've done them for so many years, they've sort of forgot, or they've stopped innovating, or they don't know what else to do. So they either jam it up with stuff that you don't need, or they just get lazy and things that should be working are no longer working. And so, yeah, I think that in the end, always revisiting, always checking to see how things are working. It's something that we take for granted. We think companies do it, but quite honestly, a lot of times companies, everyone gets busy. And they forget that support services are critical. And then all of a sudden something like COVID happens. And then, we realize now just how important all this is, how much it is just to have great infrastructure. So
Definitely.
Absolutely.
No, I think
absolutely.
Tesla's a really good example of that with the updates that they do from a software perspective. So I think that is something that maybe companies are just going to have to do, and they can't just stay with their old stuff that they did, 2 or 3 years ago, because that seems old now from an innovation perspective.
Yeah. So wrapping up, and we have 2 more little parts here, but because this is our last one for a while. Obviously, it's been a tough time. These have been crazy, challenging times. 2020 will go as the year of, Lord, how did we get past that? From a business perspective, is there any philosophies, any knowledge, anything that you guys have gathered over these last few months that you'd like to share to help people get through not just what's happening now, but it's probably going to be tough for a bit. Next year will be a transitional year at best.
Yeah.
And so any advice, any philosophy do you guys want to share?
I think, in my view,
first of all, that is a really tough
that's
question.
a really broad. I mean, I could write a book about this.
Oh yeah, I know, right? But hey, you got to go big for the end.
Yeah, I think it's weird social distancing. It's exposed actually how social creatures we are.
Yeah.
When all this initially happened, I was like, I didn't mind being on my own. I like happy with my own company. I realized that's absolute nonsense. I think the positives, it's allowed me to get a stronger relationship with my wife, because we have to see each other every day. Something we never used to do, of course, because I was always in the office.
Yeah.
And that's been a real good positive. But from the working dynamic point of view, constantly be talking to your colleagues, but not about work, just general about stuff. But not talking for talking's sake. Use the time to develop a relationship with people you thought, you know what, if we were in the office, I would like to have got to know them better. Oh, damn, then they've left. Do it now. So just spend time with people of similar mindsets, build that quality friendship. And of course, if life ever gets back to as it was, that will be able to, let's say, transcend and take a life of its own. So invest in good time with good people. Simple as, in my view.
Yeah. No, it's once again, things that seem so obvious, but they need to be repeated because they're not as obvious as they appear to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I think Asif really hit the nail on the head there. I think we've seen the stats of people actually working more during COVID because they don't have that commute. They're not going to the gym or whatever, and it just seems to be the work you're working. You're not even.
Oh, we lost you.
Yeah, he's had a bit of Wi-Fi problems. Nick, the grand finale, we lost you.
And then cliffhanger.
Yeah, terrible. He's gone. He's out. There you go. No, let me try and finish it for him.
No,
what's he saying about working? Oh.
Go ahead. He'll probably log in a sec. We got 8 minutes left, so we gotta. Let's see. This is going to be exciting. I'm just going to let this. We're just going to let this play. This is going to be how it is. This is.
I think,
unless you guys see otherwise.
What I was going to say is, it's giving you some valuable time to, a little bit like we've spoken about before, watching good content. It's watching good TV, listening to, rediscovering your album collection. I'm a big music buff, and it's been brilliant to listen to a lot of the old hard rock, heavy metal, grunge bands I used to be into.
I've been loving what's coming out of London now. Porridge Radio, Idols, Fontaines DC. Although Fontaines DC are technically Irish, but still, what's been the music that's been coming over across the pond? Excellent. Nick, you're back.
Nick, you're back.
Funny, I don't know what happened there. It kicked me out.
It was a great cliffhanger. It was a great cliffhanger, but go ahead.
Very profound. I know it was one of the quotes that I wrote down to use in the podcast, and it's the last one I've got, so I have to use it.
Go for it.
Yeah. We're no longer, I guess, working from home. We're kind of home at work, if that makes sense, and it's all this kind of blurred line where there's no kind of the distinction, and I think that has had a real big impact that we'll kind of see in studies going forward. So I think it's illuminated that, and we need to, as Asif said, really emphasize that the dynamics and the relationships you have at work don't need to just be strictly work and just business all the time. And those, conversations about other things like what you've watched on Netflix or what band you've just found on Spotify are really important to maintaining, good mental health during these difficult times.
Yeah. I'll tell you, and we'll wrap it with this. If you don't mind, can I share you a little story of Christmas cheer? That also kind of has to do with logistics. Really, the 20 years of logistics. We were talking about how the key to delivery, the key to logistics now and supply chain is managing expectations. So before I was married to her, and by the way, I can agree. I've spent a lot of time with my wife this year. It's been fabulous. We've actually had a very, very nice year together. And we spent so much time together, which has been wonderful. But before we were married and suffering through COVID 20 years ago, it was around Christmas, and she unveiled to me that she wanted a Hello Kitty toaster. And it was like a week before Christmas. And so, sure enough, I think it was like the 21st, I got online, and Amazon didn't have it. So you could kind of go around and look in Google and see, like, there was a lot of, this was the startup bubble, right? There was a lot of little startup shops. And there was a little sort of indie thing called Cool Toys, I think TOYZ or something, very, very late 90s. Kicking the Dawson's Creek music, right? And so they had the toaster, and I ordered it. But of course I got concerned because Christmas is only a few days away. So I called the 800 number, and it's this kid answers his phone. He's like, "Hello?" I'm like, "Is this cooltoys.com?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's me. What's up?" I'm like, "Well, I ordered a Hello Kitty toaster. I was wondering if, do you see it? Is there anything going on with it?" He says, "Hang on one second." I hear some tapping on the keyboard. Back in the days when they had the old keyboards, you can hear like the cool tapping. He goes, "Oh yeah, I got it right here. You know what? I'm going to swing down the warehouse this afternoon. I'll expedite this shipping. You'll have it." I said, "That's great." I said, "So you're cooltoys.com." And the kid explained to me, he says, "Well, actually, I'm a student at USC. He was like a junior. And this is how he was like kind of paying for college. He had rented out some warehouse space." And I think when I look back in those days, to call the number, to have a kid in a dorm answer the phone and manage it from his dorm room, how far we've gotten in 20 years.
Wow.
Where's that kid
Crazy.
working now? I wonder. He's got to be running something.
I thought the way that
Totally.
story ended was, and that kid is now.
I don't know. I have no clue whatever happened to that kid. I really don't. I'm assuming he's successful, but in the end, just that idea that it was such a DIY industry 2 decades ago, and now it is such a scientifically and technologically superior system. It's just, you always got to take a moment, take a step back, and just admire that, I think.
Definitely.
Thank you guys so much for being on the show.
No worries, our
worries.
pleasure. I'm just regretful it's taken so long.
Oh, that's all right. Hey, sometimes, good things come to those who wait. We'll end with a cliche. There we go.
And if we want to end with one more cliche, is that all good things must come to an end. At least for now. We'll be back sometime in 2021, we think. We have the unfortunate problem of having just too much to do over here at Aptude. We've been very, very busy. And if you get a chance to visit our website at aptude.com, you can see a lot of our handiwork. You can see a lot of the different things we're doing. We've actually expanded so much in data science. You can download our periodic table of data science. Just a fun, classy way to show you all the different things that we're doing. So, I just want to thank you guys all for hanging in there, and want to thank all of our guests this year. It's been a trying year. It's been a crazy year. But we made it so far, and I look forward to getting back in front of you. I'm thinking probably June, July 2021, we'll check in. We'll see how things are going. So from all of us here at Aptude, thank you so much for listening to us here at Recalibrate and Go. It's been a lot of fun, and I've thoroughly enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you all for listening. Take care, stay safe, and happy holidays.